Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pass the Noise podcast, the show where we have open forum discussions. I am your co-host, Elder Michael Hightower, joined as always by Apostle T.B. Walker. Apostle, how you doing?
I am fantastic as usual.
Great, great. So last week we had a really good conversation. A lot of it was about the burdens that we place as a society, that we place on our children in terms of what they're exposed to and the decisions they're being asked to make, adult decisions that they're being asked to make as if they are adults when clearly they're not. We talked about some of the damage that's being done in our society as a result. At the end of the show, we teased a clip where we're going to move into the direction of dealing with some of the sexualization of teens in Hollywood, and we're going to replay that. We're going to discuss that shortly, but first, for the first time ever, we have viewer submitted topics that we're going to cover. So I know we always ask for topics, people to chime in and say, hey, I'd love to hear you guys talk about this, or let's have a discussion about that. Wonderful. I mean, we have no issue with it. So two different people suggested a total of 3 topics. I think we're going to get to 2 of them tonight, and then the next one we'll get to next week. But we certainly thank you for your viewership and
absolutely
for, submitting the topic that we can really jump into. And obviously, whether that was your topic or not that you suggested, please feel free to jump in and sort of make your take. Give us your take, make your feelings known, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're having a conversation, but we want you to jump in and enjoy the conversation and join in as well. Make your thoughts and feelings known as well. So as always, that's always the case. Little housekeeping here. So just to make sure. So a week or so ago, we had this weird issue where we got kicked off of Facebook. People couldn't see it. So just a reminder that you can also, if something happens on Facebook, you can always go to our YouTube page. I'm putting that in the comments now, so you'll have it. You can bookmark it, whatever the case is, so that you'll have it, so that if you, like I said, if we get for some reason blocked on Facebook, you can jump over to YouTube, where we're also broadcasting live. So didn't want you to forget that. And let's get to our first topic. Let's get to it. So this is a viewer submitted again. We'll play the clip, and then we'll talk about some of what they sort of presented to us as potential for discussion.
Starting this month, it's going to get harder for millions of people to afford groceries. Today, additional benefits allocated for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, ended in 32 states, including our own.
Letitia Brito is wondering how she's going to feed her family. She's one of about 30 million Americans whose additional food stamp benefits expired on Wednesday.
What is really worrying me right now is having to cut down on the food that I'm going to have to buy so I can have enough money to pay my rent.
During the pandemic, Congress allowed recipients of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, to receive the maximum monthly amount. That helped keep an estimated 4 million people out of poverty. With things going back to normal, benefits are down by at least $95 and potentially more than $250 for others.
And with the allotments going away, people will be back to an average of only $6 a person a day for food. That's what the SNAP allotment is.
So yeah, so the question that the viewer or some of the topic they wanted us to kind of discuss was, how do we have billions of dollars to send to Ukraine, but we can't sustain an increased benefit to a program such as SNAP or food assistance programs like that? It's a good question. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, I mean, I think what you find is just what we prioritize. We are the police of the world, especially from, with I think the Democratic mindset has, the Democratic Party mentality has been that we are supposed to govern to maintain the world. And, under most circumstances, that has worked because America has also been okay. So we haven't felt it. But I think that as we look at this, we have to kind of revisit our own thinking, because obviously money's there. right? Money's there.
Yeah.
It is just a matter of like what we as a government and what we as a society really prioritize. And I think, in all honesty, and looking at some clips, and just kind of talking about this subject and looking at some clips myself, one of the things that I looked at was the comment section. And in looking at the comment section, you can kind of see how divided we are, because there were a lot of people who were saying, well, you know what, you had plenty of time to prepare. You know what that means? You didn't need all those those ribeye steaks, and you didn't need all those crab legs, right? So I think the idea, and I think, in all honesty, I think that the view of who the poor is in this country has changed. And I think that, the idea is like we're giving them a handout, and there's a certain view of them, right? The crab leg, the people who just are sitting on the dole and just splurging. But I think that as this, this idea and the pandemic has made it a much, much bigger issue, much broader issue, and it's crossed many, many lines. I think that America now has to revisit what's really important. And the truth of the matter is, I think the poor in our country don't come in anywhere near in terms of value that the war in Ukraine and the Ukrainians and others who seem to be under the onslaught of an old enemy such as Russia. I think that that's really what it is. Russia has the devil's horns, and so how much do you expend to fight the devil? You wouldn't give anything to fight the devil.
Right. Yeah.
And the devil in this country is really poverty. It's not Putin.
Right. No, and it's I'm sure you've been to the grocery store lately. I had to run there today. Everything's more expensive, so they're getting double whammy, right? They're losing their benefit as prices continue to go up. So I mean, it's just like where do you go from here? I get that some people don't like entitlement programs. Some people think they're a waste of money. Some people think that people get them because they're lazy or this, that, and the other. But clearly there are people who have a need that needs to be filled in terms of their income doesn't cover some of the basic necessities. And if you want to argue that some people go and they grab the filet and a couple of pounds of salmon, sure, of course. So if you're going to help people, you have to sort of just reconcile that some people are going to abuse the program. Anytime people are giving money or people are getting money that's not theirs, there's the potential for fraud and waste, and that's just what it is. But either we're going to try to help people, or we're not. And I think in part of the clip, the person was saying now things are back to normal. I don't know where I have no idea where they're living, where things are back to normal, but it's not here. Because I was at the store today, and like I said, everyth's higher, empty shelves again, all over the place. And like I did some work at a food bank a year or so ago, and my employer is like one of our community service things. You go to the food bank. A lot of their food was surplus from grocery stores. Right. And when I'm seeing, when I go to the grocery store, I don't know how they would have any surplus. I mean, they barely have enough, for their paying customers. So I'm seeing too that where the food banks are hurting because they're not getting the donations that they used to get, and so we do have people who are going hungry, and kids who are going to school hungry, parents who were trying to work hungry, and low income is just that. I think that sometimes people look at that as someone's character, right? You're low income, therefore you are, a bum. You're high income, that means you're a great person, which is how you end up with Bernie Madoff. Right. Because, if you got the $5,000 student, he can't be bad. He's got this high. But I mean, I think that is nothing can be further from the truth than that. Low income people have jobs that pay low income. I mean, there's nothing about their character about that. It's just, that's the job they have.
Sure. But as with this all being about a numbers game, I think that the government is able to understand the numbers and knows what the numbers really are, recognizing real job numbers, right? Realizing that there may be increases and there are jobs there, but whether those jobs actually meet the increase, in terms of prices, the government is aware of that. I think what we have is, again, priority, this idea that America is not Americans aren't necessarily first. And when they talked about, the idea that we've kind of come back to normal, that's really one segment of society that has actually been able to really bounce back. And in some ways, because that's a voting block that, is kind of already secured, because there's a certain demographic that's already there. I think that there's another group that is kind of falling under the cracks that's always been kind of left aside. And we're just kind of seeing it more because it's hitting more people. That group that has been falling under the cracks has now grown. It's bigger than it was. You know, had this pandemic not happened, guarantee you we wouldn't even be talking about that because that group wasn't there. We've added another layer to those that are in poverty in this country now. And so I think the cry is going to be greater, but it's going to cause some policy changes.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, but I think that to your point, I mean, whether it's the federal government or state governments, they have their other, you know, whatever their spending priorities are, it's what they are. It never seems to be enough money for these kind of programs or education. Always, those are always like, we don't have enough money to we don't have enough money to do this, or you have to wait. It's over 3 years, and yet again, we have set boatloads of money, billions overseas. I think that last week, 5 days ago, $400 million in additional aid to Ukraine. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of money.
Well, you know, when I say policy change, I really mean a complete sea change in the country. I think that the reality is that, you know, the idea of America first has to be looked at again. You know, I mean, it came out of the mouth of Donald Trump, right? So I think in some ways, because it spewed out of the mouth of Donald Trump, you know, it was kind of like, okay, the truth coming out of the mouth of a gargoyle, right? You kind of look and say, listen, you know, if a vampire said it, look, who's going to listen to it, right? But truth is truth. Yeah. And I think in the end of the day, we may be looking at kind of having to revisit some of the things that we didn't like that were spoken, that this is what it looks like if we put America first. You know, if we really looked at America and Americans first, you know, that in no way means that we don't care about the world. But this, you know, when you look at being a police of the world, this is what it looks like. We prioritize border security for countries outside of this country, but not border security for ourselves. Right. You know, we want to make sure that there's housing for people who come in here illegally, but we just have a housing crisis that we just can't seem to fix for homeless here. And this is just another slap in the face for Americans. This is not even just about poor Americans, but this is a slap in the face against Americans. And the more that pool is no longer just one group, but that it's now beginning to be diversified, there's going to be another cry for America first. And I think that's where we're going. I mean, in order to repair this nation, I think we have to go in that direction. We've kind of looked outside and helped everybody else without really looking at the problems that are just grown: homelessness, poverty, you know, drug addiction. It's just grown exponentially as we're helping eradicate those very same things all over the world.
Yeah, but I mean, at least, we're certainly pouring a lot of money into those efforts outside of the United States. And I think that, to your point, you know, America first, because it was one of Trump's talking points. It became like a curse, you know, like a curse word, a bad phrase. When, you know, when you think about it in a realistic point of view, it's like, let's take care of the people here and the things here and the infrastructure here and the schools here and the housing here first. Then we can, once we got ourselves straight, then we can go to these other places and help them with their stuff. Because otherwise it looks kind of silly. And we're not the only, you know, industrialized nation to operate like that. The UK is similar, and other countries that do some of the same things. But I don't think any of them do it on the scale that we do it on. Right. To the point, we're supposed to be, you know, the leader of the free world, and so that means that we lead with our dollars, with our taxpayer dollars. Right. Which I think if you ask people, I think most people would say, I'd rather that money go to help people here than go overseas. Well, who knows what's going to happen to it? I mean, certainly people over in Ukraine need help, but do they need help more than people in San Francisco? I mean, need help more than people in Baltimore or Boston, or where we have these homeless crises and other things. Do they need more help than these people? It just seems strange to pass over them to help somebody else. It seems like a strange dynamic, but it's a dynamic that we have. And like you said, unless there's a wholesale policy change, it's going to be the same. It's not.
Well, and you know, the bottom line is the answer is probably no. They need as much help as we need, right? Yeah. This is where now we've got to make a decision whether, okay, now who do we help first? Who do we help? Who are we charged to help? in terms of our Constitution, in terms of our true governmental responsibility. Federal government is really supposed to help us, right? So the question that we have is a weird question for a nation that's in trouble. You know, I mean, we need it. Wow, which one do we help first? You know, I mean, like, is there a head of a household that would look and say, we've got to have food, but the people next door, they need food too. Man, I've only got this 20. How do I split it between the two? I don't think they would, there's no person in the household would even think that. They would say, listen, here's how we're going to manage that $20 for our household. And unfortunately, there are some things that happen in this world that aren't our responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think we have to recognize that, you know, that's Europe. And there's a lot of powers in Europe that can really handle this. NATO is there. So there's a lot that can handle this. And I think this is an old archaic mindset that, you know, from another day that is really being exposed, did not to work in 2023.
Yeah. We have a comment. Chavez Walker says, sadly enough, we don't even use our dollars to support those that fight to ensure our freedom. Yeah, I saw some things, something about the veterans housing units that were late or delayed or something. So we don't even. I know that they've had issues at Walter Reed in terms of supplying medical care to veterans. I know there's been some issues with the veterans as well. So that's true. I mean,
how many veteran families are on welfare? You know, there are lots of veteran families are going to feel this as well.
Yeah.
They're
come back with. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was going to say, if you come back with PSTD or some other physical or mental injuries, you're not going to be able to hold down a full-time job. And if you can, it's not going to be like, you know, in the executive suite. You're going to do what you can do. But I mean, in some cases, these people are so damaged when they come back that all they can do is low-income type of work.
Right.
And they don't get the support that they should get from the government, which is crazy.
Yeah. And that, you know, again, that's kind of shows you that change that we really need to make.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. So moving on to the next topic, which sort of flows into this, we have yet another, I hadn't heard about this, zombie drug. We have another drug concoction that's making the rounds. Let's take a look at this clip and then we'll talk about it.
A new deadly drug is moving into the headlines, and get this, it is a mix of a veterinary tranquilizer that's cut with other drugs. It's called Trank, or the zombie drug, and it can rot skin and make users just fall asleep, and sometimes they don't even wake up.
Health officials are warning people about a drug used as an animal sedative or pain reliever. The Food and Drug Administration says xylazine is a drug approved for animals and not safe for humans. The FDA and South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control both say it's being found in powder and pill forms and is being mixed with other illegal drugs.
Seeing it, fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamines, it's being mixed with all illicit drugs. And what it essentially does is it intensifies the effects and prolongs the effects of the other drugs that it's being mixed with.
Underneath is dead. If you've ever wondered what could make fentanyl, probably the most lethal street drug in modern history, any worse, tonight we have the answer. Trank. Drug users turned into real-life zombies right down to the rotten flesh. We didn't want to believe it either, but it is real and it is here.
Yeah. So my first thing I thought when I heard that clip, I was like, how are people just getting a hold to animal tranquilizers to put into anything, drugs or anything else? And it's like, found out, you know what? Animal tranquilizers are not a controlled substance. Why?
Right.
Because they're not taking into account, you know what? Let's make sure people don't get, things make the tranquilizer a horse and put it in drugs. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things where it doesn't occur to you. And so you can get animal tranquilizer pretty easily. And
absolutely,
other thing that you can get.
Absolutely, you know, I mean, I'm in Philly quite a bit, and so I've seen this.
No, okay.
I've definitely seen this. I've seen this at Kensington Avenue. I mean, you just see a line of people, and the trank, as a tranquilizer. That's when you see people and they're bent over, but they don't hit the ground, but it's contorted in these shapes. It is the craziest thing, and what you see is that kind of started, well, with heroin and then fentanyl being added, but they didn't know. And then slowly but surely, they started adding this, what's called the xylazine, and this is what dealers are doing to really expand the drug. But this is one of those things where, they're not telling you what's happening, what's going on. And, and I remember thinking, because I love watching zombie movies. I used to love zombie movies. And I'm just, wondering, like, seeing such an onslaught since maybe the last 5 years of zombie movies, Walking Dead, just, World War Z, just a gazillion much more. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be crazy that one day there'll be zombies? And as I look at this, what I'm thinking, as you look at some of these cities and you look at some of these, some of the trank users, you really see how not only does it change the flesh, where they're literally dying while they're living, but it also changes the brain. It changes the mind. So the idea that you would have flesh-eating people, that you would have people who would be, the Walking Dead, as wild and weird as it seemed in the 50s and 60s with Night of the Living Dead and those original movies, man, we're there.
Yeah.
We're there. We're there where people are now being with against their will, sometimes without knowing, but being in that dangerous lifestyle that are really being turned into zombies before our very own eyes. How do you combat that?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're trying to. I mean, they're coming there. You saw people on the streets who are trying to help the people and get them into care. They're trying to come up with something that will reverse it. It's certain, like Narcan. Narcan will not work on this. Narcan will not work on trank, so it's ineffective there. But there's always going to be something new to combat, because, as the guy said in the clip, the whole purpose is to intensify the high, make it last longer. So as long as people can figure out ways to do that, that's just going to keep on happening. Without any thought for the consequences to the people who are taking these drugs with or without their knowledge. But that's sort of where we are in a society, where we have people who are sitting at home or sitting in a basement, whatever, cooking up ways to make people even more addicted than they would have than they already are. So you have people who are already taking fentanyl and other things. Let's put something else in there and just make it even more intense. It's crazy, but that is the world we live in. That these things are readily available across the country. Like this is, I think that was in South Carolina or somewhere, but I saw clips from Seattle and other places where
absolutely.
Same thing. So it's sweeping the country like opioids did, right? Opioid crisis sweeping the country. This is going to sweep the country, and there's just it's crazy. But again, you never see drug dealers going out of business sales, right? They always can sell their product no matter what their product is, because there's a demand for it. So even as they make these crazy things, you still have people saying, "Yeah, I'll take that." It might do what? Yeah, it's not gonna happen to me, and they do it, and then you get hooked, and then you can't stop. So it's really a kind of a crazy turn of events, but it is sort of where we are as a not as a country, as a world, because some of these drugs don't even come from inside this country. They come from other places where people make them and send them here because, of course, it's where the demand and the dollars are.
Sure. It is a worldwide problem, but I mean, so much of it is our country because we just consume. So we just and I guess some of the things we have to ask, and I don't know if we're really asking, is that why? If we're leading the free world, if this is the land of opportunity, if this is the land of the free, why are we so drugged up? Why are people willing and open, willing to do what they see is killing them? What's going on in America? And I think that as we look at this, we are really, really analyzing the world, but I don't think we analyze ourselves to be able to say, why are we medicating ourselves so much? And because in the end of the day, that clip that you saw, that was maintenance. That was an EMT worker who was maintaining, but with a person you can't force into treatment. Narcan only reverses the effects of the and people oftentimes are very upset when they come back to life. That's the interesting thing. Be upset because, man, now I'm back to square one.
Reality. Yeah.
I just spent 100 hours on that, and now it took me out of here, but I was still high, and now you just killed me. There's a mindset here that I think is even worse than the actions that are there, because the mindset kind of draws the actions. What's going on in America that we are so heavily medicated and feel the need to be so medicated? What's in our climate, in the world? Because I don't know how you reverse this without really getting to some of the root of our issues here.
That's a good question. And I will comment on that after we look at some of these comments.
Okay, awesome.
Let's see. So Clarice says, we have moved on from this topic as I was typing. We have been supporting other countries forever. It is like the government will try to figure out later. Or not. I mean, I think that we send this money overseas and then whatever happens there happens there. Like all the money we pour into Afghanistan, you can go back to Vietnam and the money we spent there and the money we're still spending there to do stuff. It's just, I don't know, foreign aid has been part of our MO really since forever, but really since the end of World War II. After Europe and most of Eastern Europe and the world was decimated, we stepped in and sort of helped rebuild the whole thing. We sort of took ownership of a lot of places in the world financially.
Right.
And just, it just never stopped. We never seemed to be able to say, that's enough. Like you guys, it's been 10 years, 15 years, you guys are on your own. We still have military bases all over the world that have to be maintained in places where there hasn't been a conflict in forever.
Right.
So it's just how we operate. And it really does feel strange, but that's just what we do.
And there is no figuring it out later. The idea is that America is not looking and saying, well, we'll take care of this now and we'll figure out the poverty problem later. The truth of the matter is we let that go as it goes. I mean, if we were going to figure it out later, there wouldn't be homelessness here, right? We would have figured out what to do about the homeless problem. It's something that I think America is not figuring it out. It's really allowing it to do whatever it's going to do, which is why you got a Skid Row that's real. Where people have a real address. I've been here since 1967, and that's real. I live on Skid Row. That's why you have cities that they've given up whole sections to tent cities. And poverty and open air drug markets. We've given that up. So there's no figuring it out. The figuring it out is like, some episode from The Wire where you just simply say, hey, look, that's over there. The way we're going to do is to keep this neighborhood nice is that we'll give them that whole section. And that's what we're doing in cities all over this world. All over this country. We're just giving up sections and saying, okay, in that part of LA, that's where they are. And hopefully we'll funnel them all the way over there. This problem just gets larger as it moves into areas that are not Skid Row.
But soon will be.
that soon will be. And I wonder if that'll make America move. And I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think we wouldn't
have Appalachia. We wouldn't have the problem that we have in certain rural parts of Kentucky. We know the war it's not black. It's not white. It's poor.
It's poor.
We don't value the poor in this country. We don't see them as contributors in this country. So when you look at the poor, no matter whether they've served in the military, no matter whether they're the working poor, I looked at those comments and there's a view that's there. You guys squandered it. You had your money. You had your chance. You should have been preparing during the pandemic. And so I don't feel sorry for you. Not even looking at the rest of the world and saying, hey, what happens when you're poor in America? And I think the divide is so big. If you're not poor, I don't think people know what poverty really is. And so it's hard to empathize with something you really don't know about.
Very difficult. Unless you have to really stop and really consider their circumstances. And if you don't do that, then it's just like, they're just, they're lazy. They're just, should have went to school, should have learned a trade, should have done this, should have done that. Not knowing anything about their individual circumstances of why it is that they're poor. You just don't know. And so we just put them all in the basket because it's easier. Put them all in the basket and say, we'll help them when we can, but when we can't, listen, that's on you. Like you said, you had your chance, you blew it. We want you to do. I work hard every day, so on and so forth. And not thinking either about sort of how this affects the country as a whole. Like if you think that because you live here and they live there, that's not going to have any effect at all, then you're just crazy. You haven't been paying attention because it will, because it has, because that's just the natural way that these things work. It can't stay in just one place. It's always going to be on the move, and it's
absolutely
near town sooner or later. We have some more comments. William Hill says it speaks to the depravity of humanity. I think she's talking about the drug thing. Yep. Another comment. Clarice says, I've had that same question on the Hightower. How in the world are they getting to the people? I mean, I think the people are finding them. I don't think it's that hard to find drug addicted people if you have drugs.
Well, drug addicted people they're already there, right? So the reality is what they're doing is simply giving the same customers that have become generational customers. You know, I mean, and that's what you really see. You're really seeing generational customers. The mom has been out. There's aunts and there's families of people that are affected by this. So they're already in the pipeline when they were doing heroin, mixing that heroin with fentanyl. It's the same customers that were not going to say no way. No, this is a very similar high. Some of the costs even went down. So you've got addiction that works in that very same way. Now you just have the same groups of people who are now you just add this thing that stretches it. And here's the psychosis. Listen, this is going to do this. This is going to do that. You're going to watch somebody's arm, literally, just fall off right in front of you. But here's what I can give you. It's going to get the high is going to be longer. And when you deal with an addict, you're not dealing with the sane mind. I think that people look at high and they don't realize that there's mental changes that are happening in people's brains. And like those are not the children that they were born. Those are not the kids of the people that had them. The mothers and fathers who looked at those people would not see their daughters and sons. They wouldn't even recognize the thinking, because the thinking would not allow you to literally have your skin rot on your body,
right? Your
flesh rot on your body. You would not be able to see your bones. And have, because I've seen somewhere that, the necrosis is so bad that like you can actually see the white of the bone. But this isn't the person who's saying, so get me into rehab. I remember seeing the video, the person was saying, so are you going to pay me for this? I'm looking to make sure that I still get what was promised to me, because I need to get high. I need to get some more of this thing that I know is absolutely destroying me and that is killing me.
Yeah, that's oof. Man, we have another comment. William Hill says, comment, the God of this world is real. No, 100%. And I think to your earlier question about why we do it, the God of this world is a self-medicating promoter. Medicate yourself. You don't feel well, you feel upset about this, you're happy about that, you don't like your life circumstances. Just take this and you can escape it all, which for temporarily you can. Now you don't get up front. You hear he's not going to tell you, and then you're going to suffer this. It's just like, if you just want to get away for a couple of hours, just go ahead and take this and you get away for a couple of hours. I think that we are hooked on escaping our reality, right. Real world stuff, real world decisions, real world things and consequences. And we're happy to escape through a bottle or a needle or whatever it is. We're happy to escape via those methods. We're happy to do it. And as long as you have a society that is primarily or really willing to do that, people will keep producing stuff and trying to experiment to make it last longer and be more intense. I mean, that's business. To them, it's just good business from their perspective. Well,
you know what? I think that, when you look at that, I mean, this is demonic. I mean, if you said to anyone, you were being eaten away, would you stop? Right? If I poured acid on you and and your hands started disintegrating, would you tell me to stop? And they would probably say yes. And so when you begin to look at how the enemy now has the mind, these are people who are watching. The person who was having their leg worked on, they were watching their leg work. The woman said to them, they could hear her say, you know what this means? This means that the flesh underneath this skin right here is dead. And you didn't hear them say, right? There was no like, well, get me, what can I do? Help me. No, it was, go ahead and treat this. But there was no cry for help. And I think that that's a demonic place where there's a need for help, but there's no mechanism to call for help.
Well, not only is there no cry, but the person had to ask them, do you want us to take you to the hospital? Like,
Right.
there's no, like, you get me to the emergency room. It's just like, I'm just sitting here. And like, I have to ask you, do you want treatment before you move? And like, to your point, that means you're killing yourself, but you're not even willing to like to raise one finger or even just say, you don't have to raise a finger, just
Right.
say, please get me to the hospital. And you can't even do that. And
They've
so
surrendered already.
that's a zombie. I mean, is there anything more zombie-like than that, where you just sit there knowing
Right.
you're destroying yourself and still, you know, she's like talking to like they're a baby. Like, can we take you to the hospital? Can we help you? It's like, what? Like you said, a right-minded person. Like, I mean, if you had gangrene or something else, and like the
Right.
doctor, you got this thing, you're gonna say, can we admit you to the hospital? It's
Right.
like, you like, when can I go?
If there was not that mind control, because that's what this is going on here. There's now mind control.
Yeah.
And that's what you really have is mind control. You know, there's a parasite that gets in the mind of these rodents, and rodents under normal circumstances would hide in high grass, right? It gets into the mind of into the bloodstream of this rodent and travels to its brain. And all of a sudden, the rodent, for no other reason, runs out into the middle into an open field. And they're designed. That's what the parasite does. And so therefore, the next life cycle of that parasite is to be in the gut of a bird. So how does it get there? It makes the rodent run out without cover. Bird comes, sees it, boom, and now it's, so you really see that same mind control here in people, you know, because my mind is so messed up. So I'll even feed this to my daughter. My mind is so messed up. I'll sell my daughter to this drug dealer so I can have more. You know, I'll get my son out here with me and he can hustle with me and he can help me. And now when you see them together, it's like, this is my son. I love him so much. He makes sure that I'm safe out here and that when I'm shooting up, nobody will mess with me. And so the mindset of what love is, what care is, what family is, all of that changes, not just with them, but this is going to be generational damage. That's how insidious this is. When you that lady right there probably has family.
Absolutely.
What trauma are they going through? What trauma is their mother? As I watch my daughter rot in front of me, this destroys families. Then as we look at it, we kind of think like, yeah, it's going to mess you up. Oh no, it's going to mess your sisters up. It's going to mess your brothers up. People who look up to you who might say, I'll go with you. Man, this is damage like generational, like we haven't seen. And it's going to take generations to clean this up, if it will ever get cleaned up.
Well, yeah, and it's not just damage physically to them, but they're sitting downtown. So they you know, they're got sicknesses and illness or whatever they have. They're just spending, people going past them to go to lunch or past them to do whatever they're doing, go to the bank, whatever. And so it's making our society unhealthy, it's making our country unhealthy. And these people who are diseased are just sort of hanging out.
Well, you know, I mean, listen, you know, I'm again, being in Philadelphia, one of the things about this is that, and I think that people don't recognize, is that if you have homelessness, then, you know, there were guys out there who were street cleaners, and the guys were striking. And they were striking because they're actually getting sick from human feces on the street. And, you know, when you think about it, you're not thinking about like, okay, where do they go to the bathroom? So there, I mean, what quality of life, you know, when you get used to that, because this isn't just like last year, this has been years. So when you get used to that, what kind of mindset is there, even for the people who come down there and say, I'm catching the bus down here, and what am I stepping over? And and kids that are used to seeing these needles and used to seeing drug addicts, it has such an effect on our society that we, you know, it's kind of like a poison that people take home. The stress that they'll even take back into their environment, even if they're not from there, it's going to be absolutely off the charts. Because it's like, it's PTSD. You can struggle with what you have to see every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't want to see that any day, let alone every day. Let's see, we have some more comments. It says, how much banning can the government do to stop this? Savannah Skeeter Gibson. People continue to use drugs or a device opposite of its original use. People unfortunately know and see what Trank and whatever does, but they still want it. People want to get higher, feel higher, make the high last longer, clearly abusing their bodies to the point of eating their flesh and possible amputation, but still do it, look for it, want it, and crave it. Yeah.
Well, no, I think that, I think that her question is not rhetorical, but I think the truth of the matter is, if you look at it, it is like, well, how much more can the government ban? I don't know that the government can fix this problem. I think that we're in situations where if we're hoping for fixes, we're in the ending of an empire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as you look at the end of an empire, there were things that were not, when these things happened, the empire was not in position to fix it. We're out of position to fix these things. There's some of these problems are spiritual. Some of these are not just natural problems that the government can fix. So if we don't turn to the only one who can fix it, these are actually unfixable problems. They bring us to this point of the end of the world. They're designed to get us to this point where the Antichrist is going to come. In order to get to the Antichrist, we're going to need turmoil that cannot be fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we are. We're really there. The remnant has to be pulled out. But the truth, it be told, our society is in an unfixable situation. Politicians won't understand that, right? General society, people won't understand that. There's a way we can eradicate poverty. We can eradicate, misogyny. We can eradicate sexism in this world, racism. And no way. We're in a position where that's what the Antichrist comes for. So we're really in the church age. It's about bringing the remnant together, but it will not be about fixing the ills of our society, because Trank is kind of showing you, I can rot in front of you, and I'm simply saying, you got $5? Right? My issue is not like, you see me oozing right here? Well, here's what I want. You got $5? So, I've seen it. And so it wasn't like, give me a gauze for my hand. No, it was like, you got $5? That's where we are. And that's not a governmental issue. That's a spiritual issue.
Yeah, then it's not going to be fixed, because we're
right.
in a place of spiritual decay daily. So that's the case, then, and it is the case. There's no fix. The government will try. They're talking about making the horse tranquilizers a controlled substance to make it harder to get. But then someone's come with an artificial version of it and do something else. It just.
Well, meth's illegal, right?
Yeah.
Right. Cocaine's illegal, right? Heroin's illegal, right? So
they're all illegal.
They're all illegal. So the whole idea of writing another blurb in terms of drugs and saying, hey, Drug Administration, DEA, make sure you go after horse tranquilizer as well. That's all that's there. But the idea that horse tranquilizer can be sold, you realize it's just another market. If you make it illegal, you think that vets aren't going to still sell? You think that warehouses aren't going to? People who, and you think the Chinese, where fentanyl really kind of originated, you think they're not going to make a synthetic version? That's where drugs are really going.
Yeah,
they're moving outside of just like, okay, if you do that one, scientists will make another version of that. And so that's where the synthetic drugs, the opioids were in the place of heroin. When heroin, so it was a synthetic heroin basically. So the very same thing you do with oil, they make a synthetic oil, right?
Yeah, make synthetic oil.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So this is not a situation where we'll stop that. You can't stop science. They can make crystal meth in a science lab without even some of the products. That's kind of how it's made. So it's made with household products. So unless you're going to stop selling any of the household things, that the ammonia, the ephedrine, the things you can get at the CVS, we're in trouble. And the fact that people want to get high, they'll sniff glue. Unless you're going to take Elmer's glue out, we're in a situation where people are sniffing out of paint cans.
Yeah, what it's going to do is it's going to make it harder for people who need the tranquilizer for legitimate purposes to get it. Right, the people who are actually using their own horses, it's going to make it harder. It's just
absolutely.
So now you got to go through this red tape and that red tape and this red tape. But people who are into doing stuff illegally don't care about your laws. If I'm trying to get a gun, it doesn't matter that I have a record or if it's illegal. It's like, I'm getting a gun. It makes it harder for people who actually legitimately want a gun to hunt or do something legal to get a gun. That's really all those laws do, and that's what's going to happen in this case, because they're going to make it a controlled substance. and but it's not going to stop the demand for it. And
Right.
therefore, if there's a demand, people are going to figure out a way to make something, or to your point, some approximate something close enough to it to have the same effect. And so that's what's going to happen, and that is happening. Let's see, we have another comment. So Les Walker says, America is about the dollar. If there's no money being made, it will be gone. However, it's not only street drugs, but the country is also hooked on pharmaceutical drugs. What happened to the war on drugs? We waved the white flag of surrender, and we've surrendered to the dollar. Yeah, I think with the war on drugs and things like that, I think people realize that, as we were talking about earlier, you can't stop people's appetite for their own destruction. Like, you can't make
Right.
people not want to destroy themselves, and so it's a losing fight. You can try to come up with ways to make it hard to get the drugs into the country. You can make longer sentences. You can do all those things, but someone who's highly motivated to do evil, essentially, is going to find a way to get the job done. I mean, we see that
Right.
over and over and over and over again. I think the comment earlier from William Hill said the God of this world is real, and the God of this world is real, deluding people daily into
Right.
we're seeing destroying themselves. I don't know how much more deluded can you be other than to put something into your body that you know is destroying your body. That's kind of sums it up in terms of people's mindset. So,
But we do it every day with sugar, right?
yeah,
we're really fighting the nature of man. That looks worse
You can't-
because
yeah.
you see Trank, right? You kind of see, but we actually see it with, in our world when we look at sugar, when we look at all kinds of things.
alcohol, just
Alcohol,
regular
absolutely.
alcohol. Cigarettes,
Absolutely.
regular
We do it
regular cigarettes.
Yeah, we get. I mean, there are people like I gotta stop these Twinkies. I promise this is my last spot. It's really our society. We just don't. The fruit of the spirit is going to be. I mean, without it, how can you have self-control? And we're just kind of seeing we're trying to work morality without the true elements that bring about morality. So is you had you had preachers, and we've had it for years, that kind of spoke about no smoking and drinking. Who had a size 52 waist, and nobody thought about, like, he loves chicken just like this person loves dope, and we never thought anything about it, and because we have an addictive society, so that morality has to, the fruit of the spirit is really going to be the key, where we really look and ask ourselves, are we under control? Do we have self-control? And what we're lacking is not knowledge, not biblical knowledge. Well, we don't tap into that particular area where we have to operate under self-control. We're not really taught that. We're taught don't drink, don't smoke, but we're really not taught, listen, you need to be under control. So that's why we have so much violence, right? Even in the church. We're expecting, we're accustomed to the meeting may get out of hand. Man, it's crazy. Deacon Sanchez got into a fight. Why? Because we're not thinking of self-control, and we're missing that fruit of the spirit, which is so essential in our world. So as we look at our children, we're trying to teach them morality without self-control. So they're going to shoot at teachers. They're going to fight teachers. You're going to see that they're going to snap out. They're going to suicide. All these things are coming because we're looking at the church on one dimension. We're looking at the spiritual world from one dimension, and we're missing this element of, like, the spirit has come for you to be able to control yourself. And until there's self-control, with all those other things that are there, you're still going to see yourself right away, and you just won't be able to control it. Because we try to control governments. We try to control everything but ourselves. And I think that's where we're kind of falling prey to the enemy, where the enemy's trying to get, you can control poverty. You control finances. You could control the Republican Party. No, listen, the issue is not controlling them. The issue is controlling me. Mm-hmm. So I don't go out and, I'm so mad at the Republican Party I shot. No, you know what you did? You didn't control the Republican Party. You couldn't control yourself.
Right.
That's what I think where we're really, really falling short as a nation. No more we don't have self-control. Get a gun. Right? No more self-control. Make a meme. Get back at them. Make an evil post on social media. No self-control whatsoever. How many grown people have to go? I got to apologize for what I just tweeted. I'm sorry. I was just kind of overwhelmed at the time. No, but I've already said it. No self-control.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we stop this problem if control is the real issue that we have none of it? And I think that's where, you know, even if you look at your shopping, we're addicted. Consumer society, no self-control. And the enemy's running rampant. And we're seeing the fruit of that lack of control, violence against ourselves. That's amazing when you see violence against yourself.
About yourself. That's the crazy part. That's the crazy part. More comments. Willie May Hill says, we are not fully understanding the power of demonic activity and not understand that if we submit to the Lord, we can resist the devil and he will flee.
Yes.
Not just not resisting, but just like sending invites out for them to come on in, because to your point, if it's all about self, right? It's self-pleasure, whether it's whatever it is, whatever your vice is. Even after we're told, you got to cut back on this. You got to stop doing this. You got to do more of this and less of this. We still don't do it. And we talk about it. I know I need to do more of this and less of this. I know I need that, but we don't do it because it doesn't feel good, or it's not fun, or we just don't want to, or it's taking too much time, or this, that, and the third. But the lack of, to your point, self-control and discipline will always destroy.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't control yourself and your own appetites, we already know what's in our flesh. There's no good thing in the flesh. There's nothing your flesh is going to tell you to do. Yeah, don't do that because that's going to feel good. Just back up. Just do something else. So like, when is the flesh ever going to do that? Like, no. The flesh is always looking out for itself. And if you don't have any self-control, you're going to allow the flesh to do what the flesh wants to do, even if the flesh wants to destroy itself.
Absolutely.
You're along for the ride.
Well, I think what Pastor Hill was saying, that submitting to God is really going to be the key, right? Yeah. Because in the end of the day, just like Paul said, I know what's right to do. That's the stuff I actually want to do, but that's the stuff I can't do. Right. But the answer to that is like, I got to submit myself to God. Right. I mean, and really get back to letting God lead me, because that's the only place where a submitted person, the devil will flee. A submitted believer, the enemy will flee. What you will find out here is people who are trying to stop, hoping the government will do. There's nothing. This is not a governmental problem. This is the fruit of people who have not submitted to God. This country was always going to get here the moment it kicked God out of its circle, right? The moment the Lord was no longer part of the American inner circle, America was doomed. And there's no governmental fix. The government is going to fall for this. The government is going to fall for the Antichrist. So the government has no power to fix this. The only power is for submitted believers to submit to God, and the enemy will flee. But that's not going to be society-wide. That's going to be on the individual level. And we'll just kind of, as people, have to accept that. We're going to get more lawless in this country. There's going to be more open-air markets in this country. People are going to get poorer, and there's going to be more violence. And we just have to accept that, and that we pray that God will keep us through this dark time. But this dark winter is going to last for quite a while.
Because we don't live in a society or a world that respects, generally speaking, self-sacrifice.
Right.
It's just get yours. And as much as so the idea of submitting to God is completely foreign.
That's right.
But that means you have to give up something. Like I'm no longer the decision maker. Like I'm not making the decisions. God's making the decisions. I'm not running it. He's running it. And people are not willing to do that because people want to run their own lives. People think that they have a better way of doing it. And so they're not willing to submit. And so to your point, without the submission, then you just have self, and you have your own thoughts and your own ideas. And then you end up where we end up here, where you have a country that is not submitted. And so the country just sort of goes kind of haywire. And that's kind of where, not kind of where, but it's exactly where we are. Because to your point, yeah, a lot of stuff could, in theory, be stopped, and some, and or at least the efforts could be made. But there's not going to be any efforts made because, they're not, the people who are doing this aren't at the top of these people's list in terms of things to do and people to take care of. They're too busy with the other stuff. They're too busy worrying about their own re-election or this thing or that thing. And so the people really are secondary to these other things that people are doing. When it comes to politics and public policy, the policy is really just, whatever. I mean, it's sort of the basic, most simplistic thing that we can do that won't get me kicked out of office. I mean, I'm not going to.
Well, even if they tried, though, could they do it? I mean, can you? I mean, they tried.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Did bootleggers come out of the woodworks?
Absolutely.
Moonshiners come out of the woodworks?
Yep.
The government can try it. And the problem, again, with morality is that the government, you can't legislate it. You just can't legislate. There's no way to really legislate it.
Nope.
So and government is legislated, they're filled with legislators. So since you can't legislate morality, why would you use legislators to do that? That's the role that we have as a church, I think, as the body of Christ, is to go out and get this message out that there is an answer, that there's a hope, and it won't be found in a MAGA hat. It won't be found in the, vote for Joe Biden. It won't be found in the DEA.
Right.
Because in those, there are folks right now that are doing Trank that can come out and that will come out. But it's a remnant. Our job is to get a message out that the government can't get out. It's not equipped to give this message out. It's equipped to lock you up. They can force treatment. Can give you probation, but it just doesn't have the ability to give the hope and a desire for change that only Christ can. And I think that's where we have kind of fallen down, because we look at these zombies. Who's not afraid of zombies? We look and say, I'm not going out there with those zombies. And we forget, man, in this last day, we were raised up for the zombie, believe it or not. Just as Jesus came and was like, no, I'm going down to where the lepers are, right? Those were the zombies of the day. And he actually touched a leper, which was like, these were dying, right? Leprosy, your skin starts, your flesh falls off. These are the zombies of the day. When you looked and said, this guy has no nose. And here Jesus is wading in among them with this message of hope. That's where we have to really go back. And as we look at this is meant to attract us to a group of lost. And in some ways, as the world is repulsed, we have to ask the church, like, are you too repulsed? As we see these dying people, do we look and say, no hope for you? Or do we look and say, okay, that's where I need to go, because there may be 10 lepers. I know only one will come back, but these lepers can get healed. And that one can actually go back and tell a whole bunch of other lepers. That's, I think, our mission that we kind of forget. That, like when Jesus went to talk to Levi, he went in among the sinners. We may have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we too afraid of these zombies? And what would be the mission that Christians would have in the day of the zombie? We'd have to still be able to see some zombies that can get saved. We'd have to actually see them healed, even when they're not healed yet. That's a tough job. But that's the job of the believer, I think, in 2023. Because we're about to see zombies everywhere.
Well said. We have more comments.
Okay.
Vance Keith Gibbs said, the government will try, but not much more banning or public health announcements can be made to make people stop.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It says it's worth remembering that there is a man inside that zombie.
Absolutely.
They're real people. I mean, they're people who are in a bad way, but they're people. And to your point, it may look like they're on their last leg, but they can get healed. They can receive healing. But it's not going to be necessarily at the clinic or at the hospital. Not the healing that they need, not the full holistic healing that they really need, the spiritual healing as well as the physical healing. Because, listen, we do all kinds of things to our bodies that our body may never recover from. Right. But the body's only a short time here anyway. So we're talking about not just the helping people, keep their physical self intact, but their eternal self intact. And so their eternal place is more important than even saving the physical. But we, to your point, you got to go out there and wait among them. If you're going to do anything, you've got to go out there and be where they are.
Well, listen, I mean, I remember, you and I doing evangelism out in the street together, my mom. Yep. And remember, we were in that same time in that day, crack. And heroin, but crack specifically was one of those that people looked and said, man, they've lost so much weight. Like, this was the drug that people weren't going to come back from. This was this made people zombies, and people were afraid. I'm afraid to deal with those crackheads. They're different than the coke fiends. It's different than back in the day when it was just heroin. And like, we waited in and we saw people get saved. We were in churches where everybody who got up to give a testimony, like every other person was like, yeah, I was strung out for like 12 years. I just got my kids back, after being in the system for 15 years, you know. So we saw that that could happen, right?
Mhm.
So we're living in a time where we're kind of equipped. Whereas it looks like, man, this is new, this is different. No,
Right.
we're really the ones equipped to handle this because we're the ones who've seen it before. There's a reason why Joshua and Caleb were the ones who went over into the promised land, because they had seen the wilderness. And so they knew what could happen, but they also knew, yeah, some people can actually make it. They were living testaments that, yeah, I was over in the wilderness, so I know people can make it. And if there's ever a Caleb and a Joshua that make it, man, then we have to now seek with all of our hearts to know that there's more Calebs and Joshuas locked up in the wilderness that just need us to come over and say, nah, there's better stuff over here in the promised land.
Yeah. We have another comment. Clarice Minor says, speaking to a lot of church folk, unfortunately, I've heard a lack of compassion. Yeah, I think it's inside and outside of the church, right? They did it to themselves. They brought it on themselves. They need to get cleaned up. They need to get this. They need to get that. And if they, in a lot of cases, if they could do it themselves, they would.
Sure.
But they can't, and so they need the help. So it's kind of, but it is sad that church folks would see people as irredeemable, because we more than anyone should know better, redeemed us, and so we know that's not possible to redeem people. So I think that's kind of doubly crazy that there would be church people who would say that they wouldn't have compassion, because if you don't have compassion for the lost, then who exactly is your compassion for?
Well, I think that there's a view. I think there is compassion for the lost. I think that the people are more lost than they expected. You know, I think that I came in to see some bad. I knew these were going to be rough kids, right? But when you come in and there's like they throw a dart at the door, it's like they're rougher than I thought they were. I knew that they would, they would maybe curse me out. I didn't know that I'd have to frisk them, and found out that a couple of them had guns. So I think that as we look at the world, our views, because we've been so cloistered in the church, that we look at the poor sinner and we don't look at the dangerous sinner, right? We don't look at the reality of being out there. Listen, anybody who goes out and does evangelism today is going to wade into danger. Anybody who goes out the street today is not looking and saying, these poor kids that are just led astray, like the devil just pulling them by their ear. No, the devil is influencing them to kill, steal, and to destroy like he does. So you're getting killers and robbers, and people who don't have any sense of morality. And unless we rely on the Holy Spirit and not what we see in the news, there's no way any logical person could go out today. No way. I mean, unless you're led by the Spirit, you could not go out today. It would be stupid. It would be stupid unless we had spiritual eyes. And I think because we are doing good activities and are not dealing with this spiritually, the good activities make us afraid. It's only the Spirit that emboldens us. Because remember, like I said, look where we were.
Yeah.
Look where we went, man. Look where we were in Baltimore years ago. Years ago.
Yeah.
Look where we were in the prisons, and one guard over there, and then, we're just in a room with God. I mean, look at the things that we did and where we went, and when you think back on it, those early mornings, we're setting up, we're putting out food, and we're right there on North Avenue. We're right in the middle where drugs are being sold feet away from us, and we're saying, hold on for a second, before I set this up, that you could obviously steal. I want to pray with you, and we didn't think about it. We closed our eyes and prayed and got back and got in the car. Didn't think man, you can't go here. That same Spirit that kept us then will keep us today. And that same Spirit that drew people to us. We weren't just sitting up there saying, is anybody wants to go? People walked over to us because that's what light does in darkness. It attracts. We got to remember. We have to remember. That's why the Joshua and Caleb are so important. They can remember. I remember what one man did who brought us out of Egypt. So I can remember what it was like to have a Pharaoh here who didn't want us to go. We still got out anyhow. Those guys are important. And we are those Joshua and Calebs now who can remember. I remember the crack era. I remember broken homes. I remember dangerous guys. And I remember God, how he kept us. And we drove out some of those guys who are now saved. He did ministry with us. People were in our churches together, that we saw from the street. So if that happened in the 90s, that can't happen now. That happened in the 2000s, that can't happen now. God is somehow different. Trank is bigger. Nah, it wasn't bigger than crack. We just are smaller than we were. That's what's happening with the church. We're not as emboldened as we were because now it's about church activity and not about being led by the Spirit. We did that unattached to any church. Our churches didn't send us out to do that. We did it on our own.
Yeah, I think that was part of the key, right? Because that's what if you do it through the church, then you get what Clarice was talking about. What people are saying that it's too dangerous. I can't send you out there. I can't do this, and so you don't go without thinking, which is what we did. Like you said, I mean, you go into the prison, you walk into one door, they slam the gate, down the hall steps, another gate, down another gate, and like the only thing keeping you is God, because there's no way that the one guard that's there can keep these 10 guys out if they decide to do you harm. But we went over and over and over and over and over again. Not really thinking about the danger to ourselves, which was obvious. But I mean, you just don't think about it when to your point, when you're focusing on
the mission,
you focus on the mission, you're not really thinking about your own personal safety. Now, you don't do stupid stuff. I mean, if that's what you're called to do, that's not stupid, right? I mean, it's what you're called to do. And so we, like you were saying, we went a lot of places we didn't even know, we weren't familiar with, and we just went. And what we had to do was, like, a lot of times it was mostly females with us, and didn't matter. They were holding on. It just didn't make any difference, because I mean, in that environment, it's not, you don't need testosterone. You need prayed up people. People know how to pray, how to fast, how to prepare to go out into the mission field. You don't need 2 more big guys. That's not going to help. It's not going to help you when you're behind the gates. Again, when the room with 10 guys, is that another couple of guys not gonna make any difference.
Absolutely.
Oh man, those were good times too.
Man, absolutely.
Yeah, we are over time.
Another good one.
Another good one. I'm debating what we want to tease for next week, or
I definitely want to thank the people who.
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
so
we really appreciate that. We weren't going in that direction originally, but I think it definitely was a good thing, and I think you led to some really good discussions. I certainly appreciate that. Whoever that was that sent those in, certainly appreciate that.
It was Evangelist Keisha.
Okay, awesome.
Sent in the zombie drug one, and then Sean Fader Hightower sent the other one. The snap one.
Salute to appreciate
shout out to them for that. All right, Clarice, what is you are not over there. No, we're right on time.
Appreciate you, Clarice.
Yeah. No, this was another good one. We did have other, like to your point, we did have some other topics, but this was good. And I mean, we talked before we came on the air, like wherever it goes, where it goes. And how long it takes to get to the conversation, that's how long it takes. And we'll just save the rest for next week and just keep it moving. But I definitely enjoy these conversations because they're really robust and really just getting through a lot of different things and a lot of interesting issues. So again, to your point, a shout out to the people and keep them coming. I mean, if there's other topics that you want us to discuss, you want to discuss with us, hit us up, let us know, and we'll put them on the list and we'll get to them. I think to your point, I think we were talking. You said, listen, if people are going to send these in, they got to go to the top of the heap. So that's what we did tonight. Yeah, absolutely. So
appreciate it.
Good, it's good policy, good call on your part, and So we'll be back. Great discussion, guys. Thank you, Willie Mae. Thank you for your input.
Yes, absolutely.
Great discussion, and we'll be back next week at 7 o'clock. And again, we'll queue up some more topics. If you have a topic, hit us up. Otherwise, we'll bring whatever we've gotten, and we'll be back and have another great discussion. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your comments. Your comments really make the discussion just way broader and way more in depth than just the two of us. I mean, we can have an in-depth conversation, but the other perspectives and inputs really make the conversation that much more, take it to another level in my view. So
absolutely,
keep coming back and please keep chiming in. And again, thank you. And we'll see you next week. Good night and God bless.
God bless. Take care.